Hello again. This is my second AMA, and to those of you who are watching, you're welcome. I want to start by making a small correction from my last AMA when I was talking about the amount of money that was developed through the quantitative easing program between the Federal Reserve and the Central Bank in Europe. I said last week, it was somewhere in the region of 33 or 34 billion. I meant to say 33 or 34 trillion. Now, I know you all know the difference, but that's money that was just taken from the sky. But we won't worry about that for the moment. I want to look at some questions. I have a question. Incidentally, just the questions. I have a query during the week. I met some people, and they were saying, why can't we see the screen when the questions are coming in? And I suppose I could do that, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff comes up on the screen that it's abusive stuff, and I just ignore it, and I just wouldn't want anyone seeing it. So that's my standard, if you like. So you can just take it. If you send me in a question, you can add on it that you give me permission to say who you are and where you're from, and I will do that. So we'll take it from there. Michael in Longford asked me to explain the thinking behind my transport policy on insurance. Okay, everything got to do with, and this is as simply as I can put it, everything got to do with transport in Ireland, the main people driving their car. The insurance is taking a really significant hike, and there doesn't appear to be anything that anyone can do about it. Now, the EU came in a big display of authority and raided a few offices, but after that we didn't hear anything. We saw a small fluctuation on premium prices, but we didn't see anything significant, which just tells me that there's more going on in the background with regard to the controls of this. Now, I see no difficulty at all because of the mandatory obligation with vehicle insurance like that. Rightly so, because of the third party implication. You hurt someone or you hit someone in an accident, they have to be looked after. But I think it should stop there. This country has gone mad at claiming, and every time you turn around, someone is suing someone for something. Not saying that it's not their right, but I'm just trying to overcome the heavy premiums for most people who don't get involved in this litigation. So an average car, average size engine, average mileage, fine for road tax, put a couple of cents onto, maybe a cent or two onto a litre of fuel, and that means that anyone that's driving is paying road tax, or somebody is paying it for them, right? The insurance is much the same if we take it to satisfy the obligatory or mandatory law that we pay government a fixed sum, and now we can divide that fixed sum over the year as long as you're carrying a license. It can vary for if you're a license holder or a provisional license holder. That sum can vary. Neither will be, for me, it wouldn't be that much anyway. But our local services then, our HSE services, would take care of people, both injured, anyone injured in the accident. And they would take care of them to the point of where they're bringing them back to normal life, which they do anyway. You know, I still have to find, now I didn't look too hard, but I still have to find insurance companies paying out for this, even though they're charging the premium for it. We still end up either in a public bed in a hospital getting supposed treatment from the private sector and paying through the nose for it. Now, that's basically my thinking on it. Now, I can elaborate on that. I did a few minutes video. I don't want to bore anyone with a whole lot of other details on this, but condensing it down, that's where I'm coming from with this, the transport policy. The next is about the way that we can entice tourists into Ireland with regard to the green element of our transportation system. And I believe if, in keeping with including the people of the country in the investment process for to put electric rail into our transport system, it has to happen, and we've got to take down our carbon footprint, and I think it would have a significant benefit for tourists. Right now, again, you look at the tourist demographic. That's about marketing. Private companies can target different markets to come here, but the overall agreement would be that they would be coming to a place where they can breathe air that they can't see. Wouldn't that be great? Imagine someone from China coming over. They can actually breathe air that they can't see. Think about that. Okay. There's a girl here from Kinnegad asking me about, she says, should children's allowance be means tested? And what about a rise in job seekers allowance? There's two there's two barrels on that. My thinking, children's allowance, it's not whether it's a case of whether it should be means tested or not. It has to be, doesn't it? I mean, and if you talk to wealthy people, they will tell you that they don't have a problem with children's allowance being means tested. The difficulty comes when you have the different political elements saying that what are we going to do with the money that we're saving, and people are saying, oh, we'll give us more than what we're getting. You saved it here, we'll give it to us here. I don't agree with that at all. And I'm going to come back to this in a small time with the second half of this. What about a rise in job seekers allowance? Now, I know there's a question around, and I've yet to put out my video on social welfare and how I see that going, but it cannot be a case in a progressive country where it pays more not to work than it does to work. And you can say, but it's right and it's human and all these human rights and civil rights for all this. And I don't agree. I think that if people want to put a system in where within a given period of time, you lose your job. Let's be clear here. Nobody wants anyone to start suffering overnight for any reason. You lose your job, it's an awful situation. I think that the state would step in and help you for a period of time. And enough time either for you as an individual to go back out and get other gainful employment, or come to an arrangement with the authorities where you go back into the educational system for retraining towards a goal, towards employment. This I have no difficulty with. But that's within a time frame. And anyone that starts kind of extending that time frame through excuse, and that's, I'm not going to argue with that, but there's a cut-off point on the time frame for any incremental increases. So to summarize, and I'll come into it in more detail in a video at a later stage, and you'll just have to bear with me. If you're sitting thinking that I agree with the fact that you can sit on the couch and worry about your football club and your golf handicap while others are out working, and you can get all these allowances and stay that way and live in what I call that helplessness situation, think again. This is something that I'm going to work, and I'll do it in conjunction with you, because I'll make sure the educational facilities are open and the educational opportunities are there for you to advance. But the day for sitting and not going with the rest of society, for you, for me, I'm saying it now, will be gone. each year the incremental will be smaller, and each year society will move on better and you can stay here. If you have a problem, occupational health can take you on. We can get to the core of the problem. We can get to the nub of the problem. This includes everybody that's out there. Everybody that's out there. There's going to be ample opportunity from what I'm talking about with regard to equity in your housing that I'm suggesting. Everyone has gone mad on that housing. I'm suggesting a way. So working together, we need to work together so as we can become a really progressive society. And towards the end of my video series, you'll see why I'm saying this. But you'll have to forgive me because I have to build you up to that in the sense that you have to know where I'm coming from when I say what I want to say in the end. And you'll see the mantra that I work under, nothing in isolation, you'll see what I mean really at that point. So bear with me till then. I see there's a lad called Eamon or something in Roscommon, and he's saying, why do you say tourism is important to our economy? Well, Eamon, it's a kind of a tourist brings in new money that hadn't been in Ireland before, and they've come with the intention of spending this money. They'll come with the intention, if it's up to me with regard to tourists, different demographics will come in. And you have, for me, there will be leisure, of course, and then there will be technical, educational, and medical. And again, I don't want to go into the medical side of it for a while yet, until I've given a few more videos on this. But the construction of our electrical system and our electrical generating system within this country will be a great tourist attraction for just from a sight point of view, sightseeing. There will be information posters up there explaining what's going on. And then from the educational, how it's being done, why it's being done. Students will be coming to examine what's going on. So like getting it right will be priority number one. We won't have any debacle like we had with the rebuilding of our schools. Can you imagine that? It fell down. Now, I've heard, I'll stray a little bit here. A lot of people are saying to me, oh, that's the private sector that's causing all those problems. No. The public sector gave this the green light, and they should have ensured and had contingency plans in place to deal with any eventuality. And I go back to saying management problem. It's nothing more, nothing less. Maybe people taking things for granted. I just go further and say that we're all familiar with Murphy's Law. Nobody allowed for it. And that's what happened there. But when we're back into building our electrical generating systems around here, you will see, when I tell you the best way to do it, how it won't fail. Now, just let me go a little bit further to the tourist connection and the leisure end of it. And I'm talking primarily because I'm in the Longford Westmeath constituency, that kind of constituency that embraces the Shannon. And all too often, of course, the Shannon embraces the constituency. But there's work being done on that. I know there is. And it hope with a bit of good engineering it'll work out. But just picture this. We've got Longford and we've got Westmeath and we've got Leitrim and we've got Roscommon, kind of around Loughrea. We can, from a tourist point of view, to bring new money, new tourists in, we can construct a cable car system around that lake that encompasses those 4 counties along the lakeside. And if any of you have been to any of the major cities in the world, you can buy tickets from a hop-on, hop-off point of view on a bus. Imagine doing that with the cable car system. And at each of the official stops, there's from Leitrim, from Roscommon, from Longford, and from Westmeath, the opportunities there for development of the tourist attractions that can bring really good sustainable work to the Midlands, to rural Ireland, right? Now, I'd like the farming lads that are looking at this to think about organic food to supply these tourists that are coming in. Remember now, we're breathing air that we can't see, and we're eating organic food. Now, I can tell you, I've been all over the world. I've worked all over the world. And I can tell you, that type of quality is very, very hard to compete with. And this is what you've got to work towards. Now, it will not be and cannot be government controlled outside of the cable car system being a public-private partnership arrangement whereby the public, the citizens of Ireland, are the private investors, along with commercial entity as well. And the agreement on that can be easily done. Easily done. Make no mistake about it. We can say, just as a matter of interest, we could say only pension funds need apply to this. No more rich coming in. Pension funds where tourists in other countries, their pension funds can contribute so that they can enjoy it, and maybe some of the money will filter back that way to their country. So that's a nice little connection inter-country wise, if you like. But you could start looking at different attractions around those 4 counties, and you could have Little China, where you'd have certain facilities there, and you could marry them to different countries. The people coming in then are enjoying their stay. They're getting that educational tour around from that. We're also sending them home and out into the world again as ambassadors for Ireland. I can tell you, if we do this properly, they're not going to want a vacation anywhere else, because we set such a high standard of entertainment and welcoming, and that good atmosphere that we do well here in Ireland. Not many people will want to go elsewhere. Okay, I'm going to elaborate on all these things as time go on, and again, you can send me in the questions. I've answered a few questions during the week. I've met different people, asking me different things, and we can develop as long as you know what you're getting when you look to me to appoint me to go into Dáil Éireann. I won't be going for anything other than what I'm telling you, and what I'm telling you means business for rural Ireland, for the constituencies of where I am, and I will work very well with people in Roscommon and Leitrim to make these things happen. Now, here's the thing, and I'm not ashamed in any way to say it. I know how to make this work from a business point of view. I want you to keep that in mind as well. When you're looking around for someone to vote for, I want you to keep it in mind. Okay. Let's see. I have another question here from Rachel. I'll get to everyone's question now. What would you do to solve the trolley problems in hospitals? Now, this is a bigger problem, and I don't mean an insurmountable problem. I mean it's wider. I have to include a few things with regard to answering this. And I'm going to start by asking this question. It's kind of rhetorical, but I'll ask it. If you trained, educated yourself, went through university for a learning curve for 8 years, and then went to specialise another while, and you came out and you called yourself a doctor, would you work for the money that the HSE pay you as a GP, for example, for each patient that's on your book. Now, I know you're going to say to me, oh, they're on the books anyway. But even so, you're in the reality of work now. What they get from, as a kind of a standard, takes care of overheads for the employment of other people as well, don't forget. Right? And the answer is no. Or at least you're going to have to allocate some of your time. And remember, you're not a dynamo that just keeps going. You're going to have to, allocate some of your time to your private patients also. Right? Now, if you take the different elements that would be sending people to cause, the best way to put it, to cause the trolley problem, the first thing I will do, like I've said before, remember when I said that I will put managers strategically placed throughout the civil service for this. The HSE will get those managers, and they will be looking at who is sending people into A&E to build, or into hospitals to build up that trolley count. And the question will be asked, why are they there? And again, the best people to answer these questions are the clinical people, and they will be asked. It won't be a case of, we'll accept what you say. No, that's not what good managers do. They want to know. So people going in there from nursing home, why aren't they being looked after in nursing homes? Why aren't the elderly who flu, or now again, not the doctor, but the type of treatment, medication, in bed, why isn't that at home? These are the questions that need to be asked. And this goes, in my opinion, a long way to solving the problem. Now, you might have a situation where everyone comes and the person in there can handle so much, they just don't know how to handle bigger numbers. But instead, if we work at what causes the problem, then the problem won't develop. And I believe that, in a nursing home, who sends someone that's unwell into a hospital that's suffering with a flu, or from a nursing home? Why should that be happening? Now, they'll say, well, the GP is not calling out to the nursing home often enough, and the GP might be busy with their private patients. So we've got to start looking at the numbers that we have there. Why can't we have GPs that are on contract to the hospitals paid the same as the consultants? Why not? They are consultants after all. You have to do a lot of time to specialise as a GP. And these guys are the best guys to be in control. When I say guys, I mean men and women. They're the best type of people to be in control. That's where I would be putting the control. So when they send people out to see specialists, the specialists are answerable to them, not the other way around. Specialists specialise in one area. The GP has to cover them all. Now, that's general, right? But and I will get, as again, the question is ahead of me in the sense of my videos that I make. I expect that it goes some way to answer the question, and you could follow up with more either later, or I prefer if you waited until I got the video out there to give us both a chance, so you'll see where I'm coming from, and then you can come back at me with more questions. Okay. I have a question here. How do I plan on dealing with carbon emissions? Well, the carbon emissions, as I said, with the green economy and the cars, electric cars, we're building the infrastructure that generates the electricity. The cars go electric, then there's no emissions from petrol engines, diesel engines. Now let me just make a point here, because I think that question is a better question than people realize. Right? And I'm going to deal very short. I'm just going to say a few things about this, and you can think about it, and we'll get more into this as time goes on with us, as we get to know each other. But when you start to generate green electricity, what is it that you don't need so much of now? You don't need so much oil. You know, now, what happens when you don't, demand for oil goes down? Now, I'm going to talk in these terms. Don't ask me to be specific. Is it going down by 500,000 barrels a day or 10 barrels a day? Just think of the principle behind this. The demand for oil goes down. What happens to the price of it? And more importantly, from where I'm coming from, the control that the people and countries and organizations that produce oil have over everyone's economy. I want you to think about that. I want you to sleep on that. As often, have it in your thoughts all the time. And ask yourself this question. What connection does oil have with what we do in our economy? And again, and I'm kind of, I can't do everything at the one time, so you have to bear with me. And that's a really, really good question, and I'm glad that that was asked in the context that it was asked. The person that asked that question, thinking. So just think about how we can drive down the cost of living here. And what that does is it closes that gap that exists between those who have a lot and those that don't have that much. And that's closing it from one direction. It's that downward pressure on costs. And with our investment strategies, we're lifting up the tide that lifts everyone is coming. I won't have it any other way. But you have to work with me. So let me come back to that question. And I think that came from a chap called Kenny. And I'm not sure if I have permission to say his other name, but I'm saying Kenny. And I really appreciate that question. It's a good question, right? I see here the same. How do you plan to deal with homelessness? Okay, there's reasons for people being homeless, right? Now, are they good enough reasons? Doesn't care whether they are or not. It's not important whether they are or not. There's an immediate problem, there's a short-term problem, and then there's the long-term problem. But the immediate problem of homelessness, we've just got to, as quickly as possible, build homes, supply the home, and let's now start to take care of the problems that caused the homelessness. I don't want anybody living on the street. I really don't. I know it happens, and it amazes me why our churches aren't open and the heat turned on them. I have no problem going to Mass on a Sunday, giving in money to make sure the heat stays on the church where people can stay. But that's not the answer. I'm just saying it, but it's not the answer. But in conjunction and in parallel with housing people, we have to start looking at why people are homeless. And the number one reason for me, I know people were drawn in, they were suckered in by bankers over a period of time. Again, excuse me, another conversation. I don't know what's in that water I'm drinking. But when you never buy a home. Nobody buys a home. They buy a house with the intention of making a home. But the house is an investment into real estate. And there are rules and regulations around investment. Now, let me say this. In 2008, all those rules were gathered up and thrown out the window by the government at the time because some of the money moguls were getting affected. They were going to lose money. That's the big grievance for me in all this. And not only were they looked after, but they were looked after in such a way that it was put onto our national debt, and we have to pay it all the time now. So if we default on any of these bonds, Ireland has defaulted. Right? Now, tribunals which were part of the cover-up, right? And again, I know this, I can explain this to you in time. We're all put in place, and everyone's... I know the bankers were in there. I know different bankers were in there being interviewed, and they were laughing when they came out. The competency level of those asking the questions wasn't nearly good enough to put these guys squirming on their seats. And actually, you know, if it was me, I'd be turning the whole thing over to the fraud squad, the Criminal Assets Bureau, with clear instructions. You know, we didn't see one. Did we see one solicitor in the dock? Did we see one compliance officer in the dock? I don't think so. Maybe my memory is gone. But I see the question, but it's the long term is, if you look at my video on housing, you see how I'm going to solve that. This is not about I take away the county councillor coming, oh, you have to go and bend at knee for me to give you a house. You have to make sure to give me your vote and all the votes of your family before you get a house. Under me or with me, that's gone. Those type of people are gone. That mentality in Irish politics has to be drop kicked into the ocean. And I'm making that promise to you. And one last, in this context, let me say this. In Dáil Éireann, they have the protection of the law when they say something. You know, I know lots of people have arguments with some of our commercial, our industrial leaders and our industrial captains, if you like, the captains of industry. One or two people in Dáil Éireann started mouthing about them and used their name and made accusations with no real foundation. Not foundation. If they had it, why didn't they come outside Dáil Éireann and say this and stand up and have what they're supposed to have had tested in the courts if these people were doing wrong? Now you say to me, but it's right for that Dáil Éireann to have this protection, and I agree, but not with the television cameras in it, because you're not in the Dáil then. You're the same as me now, talking to you. So I have a problem with that. I crept a little bit there, but don't worry too much about that. Again, go to my video, look at what I'm saying about housing, right? I'm sure you'll have more questions on it for me, but just open your mind, get rid of that confirmation bias. You have to, everyone has to take down this veil of bias that's in front of you, thinking that once you think it, that's it. You're not letting the sense in. You're only hearing what you want to hear yourself. That agrees with your interpretation. You know, this is not right. We've got to be better than that. I'll go to another question now. Kenny again, what are your views on medicinal cannabis? There's any amount of research that has gone on down the years on this subject, and there's a product called morphine that's already out there. Again, not being a medical person, I don't know if cannabis is a derivative of morphine or morphine is a derivative of cannabis. But what I'd say is this: if a person believes and they're unwell and they have this particular problem that none of the normal medicines seem to be working for, and we've all seen what's in the news. You know, I watch the news, I watch what's going on. I know the question, I know the premise of the question, and I will say that for me, if you take it and it works, that's it. Get a special license and get using it. Over in the United States, they're using it now officially in a lot of the states. The only bad thing that's coming out of that is there's a lot of dropouts from school. The more of this stuff that you take, the more you know. You don't need education. That's the only downside on this. But from the point of view of you having a difficulty and you believing that this will help, I think there's a special license should be issued to you. And it shouldn't take all day about getting you that license. People are unwell. Some have an illness that could be classed, if it's not taken care of properly, and it could be classed as terminal. Who wants somebody waiting on the way politicians get their job done? It's like walking in tar. I agree that it should be done, but I also agree it has to be under special license. Normal use of cannabis. I work with a friend of mine here, have done so for the last 20 years, and we've been dealing with people who are addicts. We try to help them get out. We have a number of charity shops around the Midlands and in Galway, and we're currently negotiating with, if you like, a place where people can go who are coming out of this addiction. They've come so far with us that I want to take them out of the country, and I'm negotiating now a place down in Gran Canaria where they can go down, and I'm raising some money for this, and they can go down and stay there for a couple of months just to give themselves a bit of sun, get a bit of strength back into their body. They also come and they work in the charity shops that we have, and I can tell you, based on my experience, cannabis use for recreational use is a gateway drug. Now, I'm more concerned with what causes or why people think they have a need for this. This is my concern. And in thinking about that, I talk, again, you'll see it in my education proposal, I want psychology introduced in the classroom at the earliest possible time. I want these discussions had. I want young people to see what happens to a human, actually see, not be told you can't see it because it doesn't look right. I think we're wasting our time there. I know plenty of people who would stand up and talk in front of the classroom of any age group to tell them of their story and how they came into this whole addiction avenue, this vile avenue. And this is my fear, my only fear, and I'd say Kenny, because Kenny is asking the question. And this is your third or fourth question. They're all very good questions, Kenny, and I thank you for them, because if we were all asking these type of questions, we wouldn't have too many problems in the world today. I fear that it's a gateway drug when it's used as recreational, or worse again, when somebody uses it and it takes them out of where they are and what they're living is awful. And I think some of the that there's some unsung heroes in society, right? And I firmly believe that some of the unsung heroes in this society are teachers, and they're dealing with difficulties that they're not fully trained for, or they have no one that they can turn to that is fully trained to help them. And there is something being done about that, but not enough in my opinion. And again, should these teachers have this training? I'm not so sure, in the sense that if we can get the psychology end of things introduced into the classroom at the earliest possible time, we wouldn't be having. I want to say this. Some people will remember this man, and I talk about him. And my wife, Anne, is a consultant psychiatrist, and we talk about this all the time, and she agrees. We're both fans of Anthony Blair. or Anthony Clear, I'm sorry. And he was saying those years ago when I was much, much younger, that it's important that we get this psychology into the classroom for the very reason. And we're seeing the manifestations of not doing that in society now. So, in answer to your question, medical cannabis, I think special license, and it shouldn't be a case that you have to get 22 forms to fill out. I mean, you just get one okay from your GP and that's it. And you go, like for any other medicine, I would imagine that you go to the chemist for it. I'm sure that answers your question. You know, an immediate need, get it sorted. It's the same with your last question with regard to the housing. House first. Policy, simple. House first. Now let's sort out the problem. Okay? Can I just go back to the housing thing, which again, because you asked the same question, it cannot be left entirely to the market. You might consider leaving it entirely to the market, where the weather is continuously warm and people don't have to get inside, where the weather is not adverse enough to cause us harm. But it is here, so you're kind of caught again. It's something similar to the mandatory rule on insurance. They bring in these rules and you're just thrown to the lions then. I don't agree with that. And I'm open for more discussion on this, and I can talk with you further on this. And anyone wants to come on my Facebook, I'll go and meet them anywhere, right? At any time. So, let me go back now and see. I just want to make. I don't have much time now, but I just want to make a small reference to, what are the rules that we should be living by here? I want to make a point. This kind of tells you where I come from, right? Left-wing politics in Ireland is socialism, through and through again. And it's carcinogenic. It kills economies. Now, loads of people don't believe that. I had a difficulty during the week with one or two people on Twitter who didn't understand me when I said minimum wage causes unemployment. Again, I'll come back to that. But it does. Now, they're still saying it doesn't. What can you do? Confirmation bias. You can't get through to these people. But it's, if you can imagine a harness, bridle being put on your head and a bit in your mouth, left-wing politicians grab that reins and they pull you every way they want to ensure keeping you in the bridle of poverty with that really bad tasting bit in your mouth. And they'll throw you a drink of water every so often. They give you no chance to come out and think for yourself. They don't set the rules that allow you to expand. Now, this I will fight all the time. I will expose this everywhere I see it. And I make this promise to you, I'm going to finish here now, that my connection with you and Dáil Éireann will be on the outside wall of Dáil Éireann, where there's no protection for what I say. Everything I say, I'm prepared to say outside Dáil Éireann, and I will be very, very critical of what's going on. No hiding under the protection. This is a sham. An absolute sham. Let them outside the gate now say it. People can protect their good name then. And if their good name needs to be tarnished and needs to be rubbished, then so be it. But you can't stand in the protection and have television cameras saying showing you saying it all over the world, costing huge amount of money in reduced share value in companies. Get out, go to the relative authorities, show them the evidence you have, and get them to act on it. Now, next Friday night, I'll be back at 7:30. And again, let me say to you, just if you want to come and ask me other questions, or a group if you want to get together in a house and have a cup of tea, I'm not bringing any buns, by the way, you can bake them. I'll go in and talk to you. And we can have our discussions, right? And anything I say, I can prove to you. I'm not going to leave you wondering. I can show you the proof for it. That's the promise I make to you now. Okay? And I'll have to finish up there. And thanks for watching, those of you who have. You can see a recording of this on my website. I don't know what we call it, AMA2, but it'll stay on for a while because of limited space and all that. But it will be kept to go up again at some other stage. But again, I'm there on Facebook, Twitter. You can contact me anytime you like for any question you like. I hope you've enjoyed the hour. Thanks.